Sammy, I'm going to move you into the interview room right now. Sammy from My Summer Lair incoming. And here you go, Sammy.
Hi, Sammy.
Hello, bonjour.
Bonjour. How are you?
I'm good. Yo, and welcome to My Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy. As soon as I saw that first shark fin in Jaws, I was finito with the beach for the rest of my life. Younan. Ex-Ambassadors. You know that band? They had a 2015 hit, and the bridge right before the chorus goes, I'm not going to sing it. So all hail the underdogs. All hail the new kids. All hail the outlaws. The Spielbergs and the Kubricks. Shout out to Kubrick. It's time to make a move. It's our time to make amends. It's our time to break the rules. Hey, let's begin. That bit of inspiring poetic verse sums up Laurent Bouzereau's Jaws at 50 retrospective documentary on the National Geographic channel. Jaws is a movie as a blockbuster. It has a notable cinematic legacy. It's why we're still talking and celebrating it today. From establishing Steven Spielberg as a household name, to the shooting approach, to conceal and reveal the shark. For the past 50 years, all of these fun facts and insights have been noted and put on the record. Jaws at 50 isn't even Laurent's first Jaws documentary. However, with Jaws at 50, Laurent makes a compelling case that Jaws' legacy, perhaps overlooked or underappreciated, is as a creative Big Bang. He eloquently says to me in this conversation, I really wanted Jaws at 50 to show the impact that basically without Jaws, we may not have had the kind of Hollywood that we have today. Yes, he's right. Look, I don't know if we got jaded or if we got hard. There's a kid who's sitting in a dark cinema and he is spellbound seeing this crazy cinematic world unfold. This kid is like, yo, I want to do that. I want to direct. I want to write. I want to act. I want to do that. That's the magic of cinema. That's why we put on pants and why you go to the movies. For the magic, for the spark. Laurent and I talk and laugh about it. You got to see the filmmakers in this retrospective to appreciate what I am saying. These people light up talking about Jaws. I'm talking about James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro, Emily Blunt, and more. They're not that animated marking their own movies sometimes. But as soon as Jaws comes up, the smiles come out. If anything, you could say it's the Jaws of life. Yo, I'm putting that one in the My Summer Lair Hall of Fame. That's an excellent pun. No notes. The National Geographic documentary Jaws at 50 is streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu. Here's my motivating conversation with Laurent talking about Jaws at 50, but also stimulating creativity and the passionate determination to keep making stuff. Be an artist, man. Be odd and ignore the odds. And now here's Stephanie with a jaw-dropping, yo, back to the Hall of Shame. That was a terrible pun. Yo, that one, yeah, that's Hall of Shame material for sure. Here's Stephanie with the jaw-dropping My Summer Lair introduction. Hit it.
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
I found one of the powerful threads in your documentary Jaws at 50. Jaws big banged a lot of creativity, especially for filmmakers. You have like J.J. Abrams, who saw it at 9 years old, Soderbergh at 12 years old, Del Toro, he saw it at a Mexican drive-thru, which is pretty cool. Like, these are all clips in your documentary. So when we talk about Jaws, like, remaining relevant 50 years later, and we can talk about box office and we can talk about Spielberg, but are you measuring the cultural legacy through all that unleashed creativity?
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted this film to be a generational like kind of movie and to show the impact that basically without Jaws, we may not have had the kind of Hollywood that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the great geniuses that are making movies today as a consequence of seeing Jaws or who were inspired by Jaws, like the list of names you just mentioned, would have been maybe different artists. So I think we we have a lot to be grateful for. And therefore, it was worth celebrating the 50th birthday anniversary,
Mhm.
I should say, of this great film classic.
And what about for you? You saw Jaws when you were 13. When you leave the theater, like, are you thinking like, I want to write, I want to direct, like,
Yes, all
what?
of the above.
All of the
I
above, yeah. So, like, what would now, like, 13-year-old you think about, like, hanging out with Spielberg and John Williams? You're friends with these guys.
Oh, it would be kind of like I can't believe this could be possible, of course, because, after seeing Jaws, I immediately identified the name Steven Spielberg and
Mhm.
John Williams and said, who are those people? I mean, they are creating the kind of worlds that I want to be part of. And that became my sort of mantra to move to America and meet them and be part of their world. So I'm grateful I've had the chance of accomplishing my ambition.
You grew up in France, and so you got the soundtrack before the film? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. My dad traveled a lot to America when I was a kid, and and I'll never forget my dad. I'm gonna cry if I tell that story, but he opened his suitcase and there was this soundtrack album of Jaws. And I put it on and I'm like, this sounds like the scariest movie ever. And that changed my life. And I was able to project, in my mind's eyes what this is gonna look like and what is that gonna be like.
Hmm. So that's, again, the criteria we're talking about, because you're starting to see the movie before you saw the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And for some reason, I'm not a musician, but it was speaking my language. It was truly the music itself was I was suddenly, dancing to it the
Hmm.
same way people were dancing to disco uh, uh, that time. But yeah, no, I was it was interesting, Sammy. It was speaking the film and the music and the whole creative aspect was speaking a language that I felt I understood immediately, that it was part of me without knowing it was there. And that sound I hope it doesn't sound pretentious, but I just felt a real mental connection that had nothing to do with loving the film as a fan. It
Hmm.
had to do with understanding the language of the film as an appreciator, as someone suddenly discovering a new language, a new culture, a new way of expression that I wanted to be part of.
And that expression you're talking about, this is embarrassing to admit, but it took it took me 50 years. But watching your documentary Jaws at 50, I didn't really pick up that the theme of Jaws was home.
Oh yeah.
And so
No, I
that's what you're talking about, right? Just like you felt like you were home now, even though this is a new language and a new culture, or however you describe it. You're home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I created a home when I started loving those films. It became my security blanket. So, you know.
It makes it easier to face the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a cathartic element to films, especially like scary movies.
Hmm.
But in this case, it just conjured, all that I could potentially think of in terms of career. So I'm glad it worked out.
Does that what we're talking about, is that kind of like, and you've covered Spielberg for decades, so you know this better. Like, you've talked to him, you've written books, you've made docs about him. Like, do you believe that's his greatest gift as a filmmaker, the ability to make an intimate blockbuster?
Well, I think that Stephen always felt very much of a humanitarian through movies to me. You watch his early films, even his television like Duel or Sugarland Express. And the theme of home, by the way, is in there too. And
Hmm.
when I said that to Stephen, I said, the first 10 years of your career between Duel and E.T., you have the home theme in all of them. And he said to me, I've never been far away from home. And home is cinema for him. So I found it very poetic that he said that. But yeah, I mean, it just felt very connecting that way.
And so you see the movie at 13, and now it's like 50 years later. Like, this might be a weird question, but like, how was your relationship with Bruce the shark? How was your relationship with the shark evolved? since we've had a whole now genre of shark movies are generally putting them as the bad guy, but the shark didn't really feel like a bad guy in the movie.
No, and I would argue that the way that Steven introduces the notion of the shark in the film through the first scene with Chrissy being killed is almost supernatural
Mm-hmm.
because we don't see it, and it looks like she's being grabbed by some kind of force as opposed to being killed by a shark, you know. So that's the introduction to the monster. And it's slowly revealed, like all good movies. You don't show your villain right away.
Mm-hmm.
You slowly, even a film like Friday the 13th, the guy has a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween, the guy has a mask. You can't wait for them to take it off to see what's behind the mask. And so in this case, the ocean is the mask, and it's a slow reveal, combined with the fact that the shark didn't work and they couldn't use it. So that was, then the thing that's fascinating, and I don't know if I can express this in a very clear way, but back then with this mechanical shark, since that was the only way to do it, they were really aiming for a realistic recreation of a shark in a mechanical kind of way. And it felt real because we had never seen a CGI shark, right?
Right.
So today, I feel that because we've been conditioned to seeing so many images of real sharks and also CGI sharks, it feels like the shark from Jaws has become abstract because it's no longer having that realism to it. But so it's a little bit like looking at Picasso. It's still great art, but it feels like an abstract kind of experience. So I would say that my impression of the shark has evolved with the language of film going from mechanical to CGI, but has improved actually and given the film another layer, which has to do with sort of an abstract aspect of interpretation, if you will.
Yeah, so what you're saying is interesting. I want to pull on this thread because, the shark didn't work, so that forced Spielberg to, basically hide it, right? Conceal and reveal, kind of go back between those two poles. But then how do you then resolve the contradiction where they put the shark clearly front and center on the movie poster, right? Like, they put it right up front.
Well, that's marketing. But you know what? The thing that it did really well is that, first of all, it looks nothing like the shark from the movie. So it's yet another interpretation of the monster, and the proportions are, wrong. So I think it's again being used as a metaphor for the sort of monster that's in the unknown. It's interesting. The American poster said on top, the number one thriller or something like that. In France, it said she was the first one. She was the first victim.
Yeah.
So you knew
Yeah.
there's more to come. And I'm
Yeah.
like seeing the film going like, oh my God, how many more of those scenes? I don't know I can take them,
Yeah. So then from what we're talking about then, was the shark, I guess, quote unquote, misunderstood, or was it an outsider, or was it just doing what sharks normally do if she was the first one, right?
Well, I think again, using the shark as a metaphor is much more comfortable to say the monster was there to basically stir up this whole town, this whole island, to see if they could survive it. It's the same thing as The Exorcist. That little girl that's possessed by the devil. The devil has done this so that he can test and see if the single mom can fight the devil. And so that's one of those tropes that has to do with horror movie making.
Yeah, and so let's stick with horror filmmaking, because is Jaws at 50 like an ode to practical effects? Because you document well, like the long cold days on the ocean, on the water. We just talked about the mechanical shark is not working, but it's all of it. Like the making of Jaws is basically the triumphs and the frustrations of practical effects. But that's, I think, one of the reasons why it lasted 50 years, because it looks good.
Yeah, and there's a whole mythology around this. I think because it's practical, you can totally identify it.
Mm-hmm.
If it was CGI, you can't. Yeah, I don't know how to do CGI, but if it's practical, you can totally identify. A mechanical thing is not working. We've all had a car that breaks down in the middle of the road. And then what? So that was, and the other thing that's fascinating to me is that the production of the film with the shark not working and this battle against the shark was reflective of what the story was, which is three men trying to destroy the shark.
Mm-hmm.
And the shark that was not working was trying to destroy this production. So it's a very interesting case of a movie and its production being reflective of one another.
Mm-hmm. And we have to touch upon the score again, just coming back to the soundtrack,
Yeah.
because you had just done previously a John Williams documentary, right? And you got to talk to him about the Jaws soundtrack. Like, as someone who has hung out with both John Williams and Steven Spielberg, I know they may not necessarily frame it this way, but is like, can you confirm that like reinvention is one of their bonds? That's something that they both have in common: the ability to reinvent themselves and keep going, and like having different arcs to their career.
Yeah, they always look forward, which is something they share in common. And also, in the case of Steven, his love for classic cinema of William Wyler, John Ford, Hitchcock, and John Williams, the classical music. And therefore, they've embraced the history of their art,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is very respectful and intimate, and have been able to basically use it to propel their own creativity. So they share that in common as well. And that's why they immediately connected, as artists on the Sugarland Express.
Yeah, because it seems like they see themselves as part of a long link, right? They're just one part of the link, and then film will go on long after these guys are gone, but film was there long before these guys were there, right? So the fact that they get to contribute, as you said, you get to hang out with these guys. Everybody gets a little contribution.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing to see them together is a gift. I always pinch myself when I see them together, and hopefully I was able to capture that in my film about John. But it's delightful, and it's really a brotherhood in art that is very unique, and rarely does that happen.
And that brotherhood in film and art, too, it shows up in all the interviews that you have throughout Jaws at 50. Everybody was so excited, from Emily Blunt to Soderbergh.
Yeah.
They were like kids at Christmas, right? They're just lighting up. They're like, "This is my favorite scene. I like this scene," right? Or like, "You need a bigger boat," and they're doing impressions. Like, you must have had so much fun on set.
Oh no, it's amazing. I could still be filming this because I feel, there were so many other people I want to include, but at some point you have to start cutting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you mentioned Emily Blunt. It was, I found on Instagram that she was a huge Jaws fan. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that. So it was really great fun to include filmmakers, actors, people who really have been touched by the genius of this story, really.
Mm-hmm. So as we're wrapping up, like, you're known for making these making of retrospective documentaries, from Jaws to Indiana Jones. I don't want to necessarily reduce it to a formula, but have you noticed, are there any like common core elements that make these movies so successful that they last?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see them as making of. I used to at the very beginning when I was doing the first Jaws doc, 30 years ago. It was called the Making of Jaws.
That was for the LaserDisc, right?
But for today, I really try to capture a legacy that is still happening today, and why we should not forget the creators, and why we should not forget those particular films. And here's a way to appreciate them in the context of our lives and our cinema today.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really trying to influence and inspire young people who are searching for inspiration and searching for solutions or searching for ways to express themselves in any sort of art form. And hopefully this film about the tribulations of making Jaws will inspire maybe just one person to not give up. And that will be the next artist that will do another masterpiece, and
That'll last 50 years as well.
and that will last 50 years and beyond. So
Mhm.
there you go.
Do you have, last question, do you have a favorite scene or favorite line from Jaws? I'm sure it's changed over the years as you keep watching it. But currently, do you have a favorite
Well,
line?
I would say that my favorite scene is the opening scene, because I think the entrance into anything in life is the first impression.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first impression of Jaws in that scene just like says it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that my favorite lines are the ones to do with the theme of home, because it speaks so much to what this is and what this represents. And it's a very relatable thing. And it's said 3 or 4 times in the film by different characters. And I really feel that it feeds into there's no place like home. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, home is Jaws. So there you go, full circle.
Full circle, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for the documentary as well. It was good to go down that memory lane. There is a nostalgia factor with Jaws, right? Just being around for 50 years. So
Completely.
mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Great questions.
Yo, that was Laurent, and his documentary Jaws at 50 is streaming on Disney Plus and on Hulu. And I'm Sammy, host of My Summer Lair. I'm fairly certain this is the first My Summer Lair episode where I said the word LaserDisc. When was the last time you said the word LaserDisc? 20 years at least? Minimum 10 years maybe? I'm pretty certain Jaws came out in every possible format, from VHS to LaserDisc to Blu-ray, and it's now streaming on Crave and Peacock and Netflix. Check your local listings when you listen to this. That's the movie's other notable legacy. As we jump to these other movie formats, Jaws was a movie worth preserving and updating, even if it meant double or sometimes triple dipping for the fans. Sometimes you'll see a bunch of movies that are streaming on Netflix or some other streamer, Disney Plus or Hulu, and you're like, why did we update their current status? We should have thinned the herd and left some of them behind. Leave these movies behind in the VHS era. Trust me, we're not missing much. So I'm not only a guy who casually drops LaserDisc into podcast conversation, I'm also the writer of a pop culture newsletter called My Pal Sammy. I have a lot to say about Jaws that I couldn't cram into this podcast. You can look for My Pal Sammy on Substack. For this episode, it's called Jaws Turns 50 and Still Has Teeth. That's pretty impressive. You think eating all those humans would give him some cavities. So My Pal Sammy on Substack. Jaws turns 50 and still has teeth. Sign up today. As well, thank you every single human who has signed up. For you people, I would totally close the beach even on the 4th of July weekend to protect you and your loved ones from harm. Sign up today so we can keep the Jaws conversation going. Thank you for listening to me in a Netflix world. Jaws, yo.